Hello and welcome to the Kitchen Conversations podcast. My name is Patrycja Rozwora and I'm the host of this platform where we speak about contemporary art from so-called Eastern Europe. In each episode, you're going to be introduced to one artist or researcher whose visual or activist practice sheds light onto the complex former socialist region with all its histories, cultures, languages, foods, but also traumas and their inevitable contemporary consequences. The podcast is a fully independent platform existing since May 2020. If you enjoy the monthly conversations, you can support me via Patreon or share the episode with your friends or via social channels. Welcome back, dear listeners. Good news, this year is soon over, and once again we can start fresh with New Year's resolutions, ideas and projects. In the meantime, while awaiting the new year, I have one last episode for you. It has already become a small tradition that in December I'm releasing an episode made in collaboration with Contemporary LYNX and the Polish Cultural Institute London. These episodes are designed to bring iconic Polish artists and art movements into the international discourse. So if you're interested to check out some older episodes, back in 2021, I spoke to curator Julia Griffin about Młoda Polska art movement and the exhibition she has curated in William Morris Gallery in London. And last year, in 2022, in December, I had the very pleasure to speak to curator Mary Jane Jakob about an exhibition of Magdalena Abakanowicz, a great Polish fiber artist, at the Tate Modern in London. So this year's podcast episode won't be devoted to a particular exhibition, but rather to an artist. Together with art historian, critic, theorist, but also painter Agnieszka Tes, we'll take a closer look at the significant work of Polish painter Jerzy Nowosielski. 2023 has been announced by the Polish Parliament as the year of Jerzy Nowosielski, marking what would have been the 100th anniversary of the artist's birth. To mark the occasion, many shows and exhibitions have been organized across Poland to showcase his work and celebrate his legacy. Among them is the show curated by my today's guest, Agnieszka Tes, at the IMO Gallery in Stary Sącz, that is southeast from Kraków. And on the final note, before we jump into the interview with Agnieszka, on the occasion of the approaching Christmas holidays and the more spiritual part of the year for some, we will, for the first time, I think, in this podcast series, speak about art in connection to the metaphysical world. Enjoy! Welcome, Agnieszka, to Kitchen Conversations.
Welcome, Patrycja, and good morning or good evening to everyone. I'm very grateful for inviting me for this conversation, and
we continue.
And I'm waiting. Yes.
Exactly, waiting for the questions. Please briefly introduce yourself and tell us why do you think you're the right person to tell us more about Jerzy Nowosielski.
First of all, it's a great pleasure and honor for me to speak about Nowosielski's art to English-speaking audience. He is relatively unknown abroad, so it's very important to introduce its outstanding figure. I'm an art historian, art critic, also curator and painter associated in the Polish Association of Painters and Designers. Currently, I'm also artistic director of the IMO Gallery in Stary Sącz, where I organized this year exhibition devoted to influences of Nowosielski's art. Its title was The Icon of Abstraction around Jerzy Nowosielski. And I also cooperate with other contemporary art galleries like Molski Gallery and Collection in Poznań or Artemis Gallery in Krakow. What can be interesting also, I have permanent contact with many now living Polish artists. So I'm in permanent contact with this artistic scene in Poland, and that is why I feel that I'm quite well understand in current trends. My main focus, however, is spirituality in abstract painting, but I'm also open to trends of 20th and contemporary art.
For the very beginning, for someone who today hears the first time the name Nowosielski, can you, in 3 simple sentences, tell us introduce the artist?
Nowosielski is one of the most underestimated Polish artists of 20th century abroad, and he's almost completely unknown, even though we were making some endeavor to introduce his figure on the broader artistic scene, and it was for the first time in the 50s when he was Polish representative at the Biennale in Venice. But first, it was first point. The second point is that he is one of the most profoundly and deep thinker in the artistic scene, and it would be very difficult for me to find another person of such knowledge, especially in the field of theology, philosophy. So for me, personally, it's a kind of exception. His idea, it wasn't like an artistic program, artistic statement. It was something deeper, broader. And the third point is, he developed a very integral direction in his own art. It was very coherent, and he managed to combine both secular themes and sacral themes, and he was one of the most outstanding artists who renewed sacral art in monumental form.
Nowosielski was born in 1923, and this year he would have been 100 years old. And that's why, for the 100th anniversary of his birthday, the Polish parliament decided to give him this year and devote the year to his art. He passed away in 2011. Did you actually have a chance to meet the artist in person?
No, but I know some person, actually his disciples, and some other person, for example, Krystyna Czerny, one of the best researcher and a scholar who devoted her critical work to Nowosielski. So I met these people, and frequently we had conversation about him as an artist, as a professor, as he was also for some decades a professor at the Fine Art Academy in Krakow.
So you're close with the people who knew him, so that also gives you like a close insight to that. On this podcast, I speak, as you know, to artists, but also curators from, broadly speaking, Eastern Europe. And of course, Nowosielski, being Polish, fits to that. But not only was he Polish, but his father was actually of Ukrainian, Rusynian origin. And his mother, as I read, was Polish with German roots. So he already, from his upbringing, had this double culture, double identity. Can you trace some of this influence of his identity in his art and how he developed as an artist?
Yes, of course, it was a great impact on his art and on his life, on his searching of his own religious and national identity. And as far as his family is regarded, precisely, his father was Ukrainian, but more precisely, he belongs to the ethnic group living in a south east area in Poland. They are called Lemkos. And what is interesting, famous Andy Warhol was also from this ethnic group, and his mother. Yes, and he was Greco-Catholic. It's somewhere between Orthodox Church and Catholic Church. And his mother was not Polish-German, but rather Polish-Austrian roots. And she was Catholic.
Wikipedia has to change that then.
Yes, Wikipedia isn't very precise on that topic. It's better to read...
To ask you.
To read a biography by Krystyna Czerny.
And for those of you who are interested, Krystyna Czerny is a Polish critic and art historian holding a PhD in humanities, where she worked on a thesis entitled The Concept of Sacred Art by Jerzy Nowosielski. And back in 2011, so the year when Nowosielski passed away, she has published a biography, Nietoperz w świątyni, biografia Jerzego Nowosielskiego, so to translate, A Bat in the Temple, the biography of Jerzy Nowosielski, published by Znak in Kraków. The book is for now published in the Polish language, but will be translated to French soon.
And returning to Nowosielski, of course, and he was somewhere in between this Eastern and Western orientation. And just from the beginning, from his childhood, when he attended divine liturgy, as they call in Eastern Church, he was very influenced, inspired by the atmosphere of choir, of music, of this more sensual liturgy, on the role of icons, sacred images, and it very infused into his imagination. And then, when he decided to be a monk in the 30s, and he started his novice in Lwów, in Greco-Catholic monastery, he, for the first time, saw with his own eyes the great collection of Ukrainian and Orthodox icon in Lviv Museum, and it was like a real revelation for him, and he remembers that this single event influenced all his artistic life, and he couldn't forget about it. And even if he tried to, it wasn't possible for him. So it was one of the greatest personal and also artistic experience in his whole life.
Often when you start learning about the work of Nowosielski, you come across the sentence that his work was finding itself somewhere between the Western and the Eastern cultures. Should we understand it like what you just said, that it was between Poland and Ukraine and between these two branches of religion, or is there some other connection to the Western beyond Poland? How should we understand that his work was connecting East with West?
Of course, there are more subtle and non-obvious connections. He claimed that actually he even could appreciate this Eastern and Orthodox art by his experience of avant-garde. When he was a young boy, he received a book on 20th century art. It was given by his family friends, and it was actually it was a book with from the perspective of today, with a very humble black and white illustration and with very interesting text. And he was fascinated by the world of 20th century art, by the avant-garde, by cubism, by abstraction, Dadaism, surrealism, and it was also a very important factor for his later artistic development. So he declared many years later that exactly also through this avant-garde experience and this fascination with different direction in 20th century art, he was able to look at the icon with freshy eye, and it was something not so obvious. It was something to discover in a different way. So from the beginning, these two impacts of different impulses from the West and from the East actually merged into one, and later he was able to develop his own style, combining these two influences. For example, when he was shown at the Biennale of Venezia in the 50s, people saw him as a follower of Modigliani, for example. So they didn't feel his originality, that he was actually very deeply rooted in Eastern art, but rather more superficially, they saw only the surface. Actually, Modigliani, along with, for example, Maurice Utrillo, was one of the painters who impressed him. but it was only one of the impulses, and not the most important one.
I read somewhere, or I think I watched an interview with him actually, where he said that art is always sacred, all art. So not only the one he makes, but in general. And if it misses that, it's not art for him. How do you understand that?
Mm-hmm. But we have to underline that he was also a critic with some of artistic trends in the West in the second half of the century, and he considered them as a secularization of art and deprivation of this sacral element. But in what you has cited, he considered all art that has a true artistic value as sacral, because he didn't think that only art that has a religious theme can be sacred. All arts that has a certain kind of level of depth can be seen as sacral. In that context, for example, landscape by Van Gogh, or some scenes painted by Paul Gauguin could be considered as a kind of icons too, because it is a certain kind of value that true art introduces in our world, a value that through which manifests a kind of different reality, and through art we are elevate also to another dimension, and not important if it is religious art or so-called secular art. It depends on the artistic value of painting.
Nowosielski was a very religious man. He was part of the Orthodox Church. He was studying various religions. He was interested in everything that is metaphysical, or like the metaphysical world. As you said, he made art to somehow connect to that which we cannot maybe describe.
There are many different periods in Nowosielski's personal development. After Second World War, he was even in the state of ontological, as he said, atheism. And in that period, as he declared, the art was one of the gate through which another dimension entered his life. And only through art he was able to access this invisible reality. After Second World War, after seeing all this cruelty, all these terrible things that happened to humanity, he lost for 10 years his faith. And art was the bridge between life and other reality. Later he returned to religion, and he chooses Orthodox Church, not Greco-Catholic, not Catholic, but Orthodox Church, and he practiced this religion till the end of his life. From the 50s, he started to, actually maybe a little bit earlier, he started to develop his very interesting idea, for example, of abstraction. And his idea differs a lot from the other concept of abstraction, even if we consider metaphysical concepts of abstraction. As we know, there are plenty of them, for example, by Malevich, Kandinsky, Mondrian. But Nowosielski's one was a little bit different, because he thought, he had an intuition, an idea that abstraction could be a kind of icon, but icon of subtle beings, so icons of angels actually. And he thought that through icons, angelic beings can manifest and contact with human beings. And it was really original and exceptional on artistic scene. And it also appeals many artists even nowadays.
His abstraction did have realistic titles.
Yes.
Why was that? Did he want to give us a hint of what he actually means? Was it a certain gesture towards the audience?
Actually, realistic titles appeared in the 30s. We've got titles like Winter in Russia, for example, Fire, Dockyard, Pigeon's House. And he declared himself, and then his interpreters also discovered it, that actually it was a hidden figuration. He drew his inspiration from the real world, from example, from cityscapes, from circus, but also from his childhood memories and from his imagination. And he juxtaposed, because it was kind of geometrical abstraction, so he juxtaposed different figures, especially in the first period. It were triangles, playful compositions, but beyond them was a kind, as I said, figurative hidden meanings. And also in this abstraction he frequently alluded to historical event. For example, in the painting entitled Battle of Addis Ababa, he alluded to Abyssinian war provoked by Mussolini, and he considered it as aggression toward Eastern Christianity. In the paintings like Fire or Winter in Russia, he alluded to deportation of Ukrainian and Lenkos from Poland after the Second World War. So there was a hidden message for the viewer, but it's not very evident that there are so many hidden content. There's hidden content in it. We can be informed, but somewhat. For example, for me personally, it was almost impossible to discover these traces. I simply read about it, read what Krystyna Czerny had discovered, or other Ukrainians and Polish scholars said about it. There is sometimes also connection with kind of ornament, Ukrainian ornament, or with child plays, games, etc. So the atmosphere of these early and earlier abstractions were very different and very, very light in its aesthetic, but as I said, sometimes in its content they were quite serious.
So the third subject that interested Nowosielski, next to religious icons and somehow spiritual, abstract geometric compositions, were nudes. And following the entire art history of female bodies being objectified and put as a subject of male desire, I was somehow, of course, not surprised that the nudes Nowosielski portrayed were most often female. However, there was definitely something special about his portrayal of the human body that I was curious to hear more about. It seemed to me that the way he painted the bodies was very much inspired by the iconographic canon.
Yes, it's a good recognition. Actually, the body he painted aren't fleshly, aren't painted in a realistic way. They are more geometrically treated. Not sensual in a way. He drew also inspiration from other cultures, not only icon, but also from primitive art, Negro art, ancient Egyptian art. The portraying of nudes evaluated throughout his art. After Second World War, he depicted women figures in a way obsessive scenes, and it was also connected with what he saw with photos from the war reproduced in newspaper, and it was kind of devastation. Later, topics are more intimate. He frequently portrayed women in the interiors or in the cityscapes, half nudes, not fully nudes, but half nudes. And sometimes, for example, in the 70s, these nudes are black. And it's also allusion to mystery, to special kind of eroticism and to fascination of woman body, and also to suffering too. But his attitude toward it was a little bit ambiguous, I would say. So that is why his nudes are so specific. So mysterious.
I also noticed that he painted, mainly female bodies, as you said, but a few male bodies and faces as well, but often with covered eyes, so kind of looking like they would have like sunglasses. Do you have like some suspicion why he did that?
I think that it's a kind of tricky way of creating mystery. Simply, it was. He wasn't a realist. He was also inspired by surrealism, and he very appreciated this surrealistic atmosphere, something beyond normal perception, something having some kind of erotical podtext and provoking some kind of thoughts in any way not evident. He wasn't interesting in depicting nature as it is. So this kind of individual sensation about reality, its mystery, was what interested him a lot.
Yeah, definitely. In his portrayal of the human bodies or the figures, I definitely feel some mystery and some kind of stories he's trying to write. So it's not only like a body painted, but a person that is doing something in his painting. A woman looking outside the window, having her own reality kind of that he creates, which I enjoy, that he's kind of telling his story and giving these figures their own reality somehow.
It's very interesting when we read talks with him. There are plenty of them published in Polish language. And then he explained a little bit of his attitude toward women, men, nudity, eroticism, and sometimes it's quite provocative and very, very original. So I recommend to read it if it's possible. It's really exceptional, and it can't be comparable to other artistic statements.
So I would like to now speak about the exhibition you curated earlier this year in IMO Gallery in Stary Sącz, dedicated to the work of Nowosielski, but specifically how his work can inspire and is inspiring artists of next generations. So can you first briefly tell what was the idea of the exhibition and what people could see there?
Exhibition was a focus on certain topics, mainly the sacred, the abstraction and the icon. So not every kind of painting that Nowosielski created was
because
taken
he did
into,
a lot, right? He created
yes,
a lot of different things.
And different themes. So I concentrated only on these two, icon and abstraction, and the exhibition actually showed the connection between icon and abstraction. Nowosielski had an idea of abstraction as an icon of subtle beings, and he composed his abstractions like icons with main field, central field, and frame. Exhibition showed that heritage of Nowosielski art is still vivid. His art has a great resonance among contemporary Polish artists. And it was my aim to show something else, not only Nowosielski's art, but also the influence of his art. And I think the exhibition was successful because it differs from other exhibitions organized in Poland in this year, because we showed wide context of reception of his art and thought.
What aspect of his work is particularly inspiring to creative artists who make art today? How would you say which aspect is the most interesting and being developed further?
There are some of them. For example, color. His use of color, his sense of color and geometry. He has a perfect musical sense of color, and he used color in a way that Orthodox icon uses it, showing, expressing and maintaining energetical quality of color. Its spiritual value also. So I think this aspect attracts many other artists. Another aspect is if an artist is interested in icon or in abstract. For example, icon painters are interested that his attitude toward canon of icon isn't very strict, very rigid. He let some kind of individuality in the icon, even if he respected the canon, its theological content. He let himself to, for example, change a color of icons. He, for example, didn't use gold. He instead used another colors. So he modernized canon of icon, and it also attracted many young people who decided to get the path of icon. As far as we speak about abstract painters, they are interesting in his idea of abstraction as an icon, especially icon of subtle beings, of angels, and this kind of spirituality which is less hermetic, less esoterical than another concept of abstraction.
Today we speak a lot about sacral art about influences of metaphysical things, about religious things. I'm not a religious person, not particularly spiritual as well. I had a really interesting talk with a friend of mine who is listening to this podcast, and she said she misses this more spiritual aspect of art in the guests I'm inviting. So I'm happy to also have this aspect on my podcast as well, to think about art as a medium to reach, this kind of more spiritual aspect of our existence. But I'm wondering how can someone appreciate or have a conversation with the work of Nowosielski if they are not religious or particularly spiritual?
I see your point, and I thank you for that question, because I think it's very important. Nowosielski's art was firstly created after Second World War. His and his generation was damaged by the war, and they saw reality as a kind of broken mirror. And the art for him was a way to reintegrate reality. So he, through art, had access to harmony, to kind of deeper order of reality. And it was important for his personal, as I said, integrity. And also the viewer, contemporary viewer, can see these features in his picture. His painting is simply very beautiful and very harmonic. It has wonderful color emanation, so it gives us a kind of aesthetic satisfaction, not only spiritual, but because of this aesthetic aspect we can feel quite satisfied. His compositions have very good feeling of rhythm of reality, also through using different kind of geometrical figures. There is a feeling that this is something musical, something, as I said, harmonious, something that touches this not evident order of reality. And as you said, in his figurative painting, there is a very interesting story behind it. Also the kind of eroticism, of mystery. So it can intrigue us. It can provoke a kind of quietness, but also a certain kind of inquiety. So it's not so evident. I think atmosphere, climate of his painting is something exceptional, and through its artistic value it can touch also people who are not interested in higher values or in spirituality. It can be very, very aesthetically attraction toward it.
And what I take from this conversation and from the work of Nowosielski is that art can also be a medium for us to find an inner peace, escape reality somehow, and get in touch with our inner self, finding stillness in this hectic and brutal world around us, both for the makers and those who look at art. And for those of you who live in Poland or are perhaps traveling there anytime soon, at the moment there are two exhibitions devoted to Nowosielski. One in Zachęta in Warsaw, open till the 2nd of February, and the other one in the Royal Castle in Warsaw till the 3rd of March. The best place, of course, to see the icons of Nowosielski is in the Church of the Holy Spirit in Tychy, a city in Silesia in southern Poland. And this was it for today. Thank you for reaching till the end of the episode. I hope you got something out of it for yourself. As you probably know, last year, together with Contemporary LYNX, who is a partner of this podcast episode, I published the Kitchen Conversations cookbook with favorite home dishes from my podcast guests. And because it's Christmas and soon we have the New Year, I'm selling the cookbook 20% off for the whole month of December. So if you're interested and would like to support this platform, please write me. I can ship the book anywhere in Europe. Have a wonderful Christmas time, and we hear each other in the new year.